Have you ever had that feeling like, you're going about your day and something that you've always taken for granted, like something so familiar just suddenly strikes you as weird?
Yeah.
But wait a minute.
Yeah.
This is actually kind of strange.
For sure.
And today we're going to dive into that feeling specifically around music.
You're right.
Something that so many of us love and spend so much time with.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you actually think about it, it's kind of a weird thing.
Yeah, it's really strange. And that's exactly what we're going to look at today, this idea that music is weird, and we're going really deep on this based on some fascinating material that we found. And it all started from this one little idea, this one little observation that music is weird, but it just kind of spirals outward.
It goes everywhere, right?
Yeah, it goes everywhere into all these different areas of how we experience culture and art and how our brains work. And it's really something.
Yeah. So our mission today is to really unpack that statement. Music is weird.
Yes.
And see where it takes us.
Yeah. Follow the threads.
Follow the threads.
And see where they lead.
Yeah. And I think it's going to lead us to some really interesting observations about art and culture and how we engage with it all. So much of what we're going to be looking at today has to do with change.
Yeah.
And how humans adapt and process change.
Yeah. And one of the biggest changes that the material points out is the rise of reading and literacy.
This idea that, for most of human history, people weren't reading.
Right. It wasn't the norm.
They were communicating in totally different ways.
Exactly. Yeah. Orally or visually.
Right.
Through other means.
And then suddenly this thing comes along, this technology of writing, and then eventually printing.
Right.
And it spreads like wildfire.
And it changes everything.
Right. And it changes our brains.
Yeah. Literally rewires our brains.
Yeah. The source talks about how, with the printing press and the Bible becoming more accessible in the 16th century, people's brains actually had to change the way they were processing information.
Yeah, they had to adapt to this new way of receiving and understanding information.
And it makes me think about, we're in this similar kind of period now with the internet and social media.
Oh, absolutely. There are so many parallels.
Yeah, it's like this huge explosion of information and ways of communicating.
Yeah, and it's happening so fast that we're still trying to figure out how it's affecting us.
Right. Are our brains rewiring again?
Who knows, but it certainly feels like it.
Yeah, and the source draws this really interesting connection to the idea of memes.
Oh, yeah.
You know how memes spread online?
Right.
It's talking about how the meme of literacy, the idea of reading itself, spread in a very similar way back then.
Yeah, it went viral in a sense. It took hold and just transformed the culture.
And it makes me think about what's happening in the art world right now with things like NFTs and this sort of democratization of creation.
Yeah, it's like anyone can be an artist now in a way that wasn't possible before.
And everyone's trying to figure out what it all means.
Yeah, what does it mean to be an artist in this new landscape?
Right, exactly.
Where the rules are constantly changing.
And how does this new way of consuming information, this sort of internet brain that we're developing,
right,
how does that affect the way we experience music?
Yeah, that's a big question. And I think one of the biggest impacts might be on our attention spans.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Back when reading was becoming widespread, it required this incredible focus, this sustained attention on linear text.
Right, you had to really concentrate.
Yeah, and I think that might have fostered a different kind of engagement, a deeper kind of engagement.
Like you really had to be present.
Yeah, exactly. Present with the text, present with the ideas.
But now with the internet, everything's so fragmented.
Right. There's this constant influx of information.
It's coming at us from all directions.
And our attention is pulled in so many different directions.
So are we even capable of that same level of deep engagement anymore?
That's a good question. And I think it might be why we see a lot of shorter tracks and this constant need for novelty in music now.
Right. It's like we're always looking for the next thing.
Yeah, we get bored easily.
And the source talks about how this affects the way ideas spread too.
Right.
It's not so much about deep understanding anymore.
Yeah.
It's more about rapid dissemination, immediate impact.
Virality.
Exactly, virality.
Getting your message out there as quickly and widely as possible.
And that kind of brings us to this whole question of how we even define art and the artist.
Yeah, because those definitions are constantly evolving too.
Especially for younger generations who've grown up with the internet.
Right.
It's like just a totally different landscape for them.
Yeah, and the source points out how terms like songwriter and song and art and artist are constantly being redefined.
Right.
And it's really challenging those traditional notions of what it means to be an artist.
Like what even is a song anymore?
Yeah, right.
Is it a 3-minute pop song?
What?
Is it a 10-minute epic? Is it a 20-minute sound collage?
Yeah. Or is it a tweet?
Right? Or is it just a sound on TikTok?
Exactly.
And who gets to decide who's an artist?
Yeah, that's a huge question.
Because the source talks about how social media presence has become so important now.
Oh, it's essential.
It's like you almost can't be an artist without a huge following online.
Right. It's like that online capital that you build is part of the artwork itself.
It's part of the package.
Yeah, the platform becomes the canvas in a way.
And the source even mentions how some artists are really self-aware about this.
Yeah.
Like they know that their social media content might be kind of superficial.
Right.
But they see it as a necessary step to get people's attention.
To get them to engage with their more serious work.
Right.
So it's like a marketing tool.
It's like this weird balancing act between authenticity and playing the game.
Exactly.
But I thought it was interesting how the source also said that skill still matters.
Yeah.
It's just operating on a different level now.
Right.
Like, it's not just about technical mastery anymore. It's more about this conceptual level, this level 4 that it talks about.
Yeah, this postmodern approach.
Where the skill lies in the ideas and the ability to create a compelling experience.
Right.
Even if the execution is unconventional.
Yeah, it's more about the concept, the message, the impact.
And I think this is where we see this huge generational divide.
Absolutely.
Because younger people have grown up with this their whole lives.
Right, it's their native language.
They don't even know a world without the internet and social media.
And their understanding of art is shaped by that.
It's just inherent to them.
Right.
Whereas for older generations, it's like we're still trying to catch up.
We're trying to make sense of it through a different lens.
Right. And the source makes this really important point that we're not going back.
Yeah.
This is the new reality.
This is the world we live in now.
So we have to adapt.
We have to find ways to engage with it.
Okay, so we've been talking about these really big societal shifts, these huge changes in how we communicate and how we think about art.
Yeah.
But the source also takes a more personal turn and starts talking about this idea that music, while it's so central to many younger people,
right,
it kind of exists more on the periphery of Western culture for a lot of adults.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And it makes me think about my own life.
Uh-huh.
Like, how often do I spontaneously just burst into song?
Yeah.
Or start playing music outside of, like, a planned event?
Right.
It's actually kind of rare.
Yeah.
And the source uses this great example of the passing of the bassist Paul Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
And watching this amazing performance of the Headhunters from 1979 on YouTube.
That's a classic performance.
Right. And it's, like, so funky and tight and precise.
It's incredible.
Like a machine.
Like they're all connected on this other level.
Yeah. And it made the source think about where music fits in now.
Yeah.
Like compared to back then.
Right.
Because in 1979, there was this really intense exploration of music happening.
Yeah, it was a really fertile time for creativity.
People like Jaco Pastorius and Alphonso Johnson pushing the boundaries of what was possible on the bass.
Yeah, and there was this deep dive into jazz and African music.
Right. It was like this whole world of sound opening up.
Yeah, it was a really exciting time to be a musician.
But it also makes you think about how different that is from the role music plays in a lot of people's lives now.
Yeah, it's more background.
It's still there, but it's not this all-consuming passion.
Right. It's not this driving force in the same way.
And this leads to another really interesting area that the source explores. And I want to be really careful here because it's a sensitive topic.
Uh-huh.
But it's talking about this idea of cultural differences in musical expression.
Okay.
And specifically between white and black musicians.
Right.
And again, I want to be clear that this is just a personal observation from the source.
Right.
And it's not meant to be a generalization.
Yeah.
But it's talking about this feeling of a wall or lack of complete comprehension that some white musicians might experience when playing certain types of music.
Yeah, I can see that.
Especially those with strong African roots.
Yeah, like a sense of not fully grasping the essence of it.
Right. And the source acknowledges that this is a really complex issue.
Uh-huh.
And that there's a lot of history and cultural context to consider.
Yeah, like the way music has evolved in different cultures.
And the influence of different musical traditions.
And the way music is taught and learned.
But also raises this really provocative idea. And this is where it gets even more sensitive, that maybe there's a connection to DNA or heritage.
Wow.
Like a kind of internal resonance or dissonance.
Yeah.
Depending on whether the music aligns with your background.
That's a really interesting thought.
And it contrasts this with the mindset of the Headhunters in that 1979 performance.
Right.
Where they just seem so completely immersed in the music.
Yeah, like it's flowing through them effortlessly.
And the source describes this as a kind of conflict
Uh-huh.
between this Western intellectualized approach to music.
Yeah.
And a more intuitive, embodied experience.
Mm-hmm. Like trying to understand a language by studying the grammar rules versus actually speaking it fluently.
Exactly.
And feeling the rhythm and the flow.
And this connects to the discussion about linear musical education versus improvisation.
Right, because traditional Western music education is very structured.
Yeah, it's all about theory and harmony.
And it can sometimes be a hindrance when trying to understand improvisational forms like jazz and African music.
Because those forms are more about feeling and intuition.
Yeah.
And the source makes a really clear distinction between vertical harmonic complexity, which you often find in jazz, and horizontal groove-based approaches.
Like in that Headhunters concert?
Which is mostly centered around one chord.
Yeah, just this hypnotic groove on an E7.
Right, and it describes vertical harmony as like building a skyscraper of chords.
Yeah.
And horizontal groove is like a long road trip.
Where the emphasis is on the journey and the feeling of movement.
And this can be really uncomfortable for listeners who are used to Western music with its clear narratives and harmonic movement.
What's with Baroque or classical?
Right, because a lot of African music doesn't follow those same rules.
It's more about continuous flow.
And the integration of the body.
Yeah, it's meant to be danced to.
And experienced physically.
And that can be a real challenge for a Western mindset.
Which tends to be more intellectual.
Yeah.
But despite all these weirdnesses and potential cultural divides, the source actually offers this really hopeful idea.
Oh, yeah.
That music can be a way to bridge those differences.
Yeah, I love that idea.
And foster reconciliation.
Music as a unifying force.
Exactly.
Bringing people together.
And it suggests that music can cut through political and cultural barriers and create a space where people can just connect.
Yeah, just jam together.
And forget about their differences.
And find common ground.
And while acknowledging that conflicts and disagreements definitely exist, even within Western music, the point is that music at its core isn't inherently strange or alienating.
Right.
It can feel much more natural and comfortable with a shift in perspective.
And a willingness to open ourselves up to different ways of experiencing it.
And this brings us back to that central theme of music existing on the periphery in Western culture.
Right.
And the source shares this great anecdote about Prince.
Oh, yeah.
Who was surprised that people were realizing he was a musician.
That's funny.
Like it was this revelation to them.
He wasn't just a musician all the time.
Right.
Like it was a separate part of his life.
And it's like, even for someone like Prince, who's so iconic.
Yeah.
Music was still seen as this outside element.
Right, not fully integrated into everyday life.
And the source gives some personal examples, too, like preferring white noise when working.
Yeah.
Instead of consciously choosing music.
Right.
Or that feeling of guilt or shame.
Yeah.
Associated with picking up an instrument during work hours.
Like it's not a productive use of time.
Right.
Or it's somehow inappropriate.
And it's so interesting how ingrained that norm is in Western society.
Yeah, this rigid separation between work mode and creative mode.
But it's like you can't switch back and forth easily.
Right.
And the source uses this really striking analogy of stainless steel surgery tables in a restaurant. Like, imagine seeing that.
Yeah, it would be so jarring.
This feels wrong.
Completely out of place.
And that's how playing music in an office can feel.
Yeah, like a violation of some unspoken rule.
And this extends to how we engage with other art forms, too.
Right.
The source talks about how people in a work mindset often don't even engage with art in public spaces, like even during their lunch break at a museum.
Like they're just not in that headspace.
Right. They're still in work mode.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder about all those fancy offices with all the expensive artwork hanging on the walls.
Right.
Is anyone actually looking at it?
Or appreciating it.
Or is it just there for decoration?
Or to impress clients.
Right, like a status symbol.
Yeah.
And the source points out that entering a truly creative zone often requires a significant chunk of time.
Right.
Like at least 2 hours of focused attention.
To really get into the flow.
And that's just not compatible with the way most people work.
Yeah, it's like our whole work culture is set up against creativity.
In a way.
Yeah.
And finally, the source talks about the tribal nature of music.
Yeah.
And how it can create these really strong bonds between people.
Like a sense of belonging.
And it uses the example of YouTube music communities.
Right.
Where people come together to share their love of music.
Yeah.
And it contrasts this with other creative pursuits where the sense of community might be different.
Yeah.
And I think it highlights that unique bond that musicians have.
Yeah.
Like that shared language of practice and performance.
Oh, right.
And that can make it hard to talk about music with people who don't play.
Yeah, it's like they're not in the club.
But as the source says, all tribes have that characteristic.
Right, it's what defines a tribe.
It's that sense of shared identity. So as we've seen, this seemingly simple idea that music is weird has taken us on this really fascinating journey. We've talked about how shifts in literacy and technology might be reshaping our minds, how the definitions of art and artists are constantly changing, how music often plays this peripheral role in Western daily life, the subtle but significant cultural nuances in how music is expressed and felt,
right,
and the powerful, sometimes tribal nature of musical community.